This is Support is Sexy, episode 402, with transformational speaker, success coach, and author, Cheryl Polote-Williamson. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so happy to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you are a woman entrepreneur, a creative, a speaker, a coach, a consultant, any woman who wants to get your voice out there into the world to tell more people what you're up to, what you're about, what your vision is, and to share your expertise with new audiences on a consistent basis, then I want you to consider podcast guesting. Being a guest on podcasts is a great way to reach new audiences and to invite them back to your website to find out more about you and what you have to offer. So if you're interested in being a podcast guest, I have a gift for you to learn how to be unforgettable for all the right reasons. Go to girlonpodcastgift.com to download my free guide on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. Again, girlonpodcastgift.com. Now, if you're listening to this in real time, then it is likely Wednesday, morning, evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. I hope you are ready to get this good word. Our guest today, Cheryl Polote-Williamson, really brings her story and really powerfully shares her message that is about, at least for me, it was so much about second chances, about forgiveness, and about taking your dreams off hold. Forgiveness is a constant thread throughout this episode, and I think it's important for us to remember not only to forgive other people, because that can hold us back, right? Drinking poison, hoping the other person dies by holding a grudge against them, but also forgiveness of ourselves. Cheryl talks about how bad decisions should not hold us back. Those things are in the past. You have to learn how to forgive yourself and move forward. This is in business and in life. So if you are feeling stuck for any reason, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Truly powerful. And thank you so much, Cheryl, for showing up the way that you did. So I'm not going to keep you from this message any longer. Without further ado, Cheryl Polote-Williamson. So Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
I am honored to be here. I've been looking forward to it for probably a few weeks now.
Yes.
So I feel honored and humbled for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. And a special shout to Sharon Jameson, who connected us. Thank you for that.
Definitely. Such a sweet, sweet person and a dynamic business lady.
That's right. So our first question for you, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I have been in love with entrepreneurship since I was probably about 11 or 12. I'm actually a second generation entrepreneur. My father has been in business for 42 years. So I grew up knowing and loving, seeing my father do what he does as an entrepreneur in the community. And I always knew that that was something that I wanted to explore for myself.
What kind of businesses did your dad have?
My father has a construction company. So he's built prisons, hospitals, airport towers, highways.
Did you think that you were going to go into the family business, if you will, or did you think it would be something else?
Look, it's so funny that you asked me that because ironically, I have only ever worked for my father as a teen. My brother and my sister still work for my father.
Oh.
I never wanted to do construction full-time at all. My father had me work on the back of the truck and all of those things so that I would learn what it took. But I knew early on that I really didn't want to do construction. I didn't want to be responsible for that many moving parts.
Now, how did that go over with you, since it sounds like your other siblings went into the family business and you wanting to do something else? Was that something
Actually,
they
it
were
was a
open
little
to?
bit difficult for my father to understand at first. But I will tell you the change came because my brother and my sister stayed very close around the home. But I left for boarding school at 15, and I've never been back home.
Now where did you grow
So
up?
I grew up in Savannah, Georgia,
Oh,
and
okay.
all of my family is still there in Savannah. But I went to the Greer School for Girls in Tyrone, Pennsylvania at 15, and then from there I went off to college, and I never went back home on a consistent basis. My brother and my sister, they've pretty much been in that area, especially my brother. Once he graduated from college, he went right. That's the only job my brother has ever had. He's always worked for my father.
Now, what took you to boarding school? Were you the oldest, or was there another
No,
reason
I
that you
was
went?
actually a middle child, and I'm very adventurous. So I happened to be reading 17 magazine, and I told my parents, I said, I think I want to go to boarding school. So I actually found 3 boarding schools that I interviewed with. And when I got to Greer School, I fell in love with the Greer School, just the environment and the opportunity to see something different, be around different people. Savannah's a small town. I love my hometown, don't get me wrong. But through going to boarding school, it afforded me the opportunity to see life from a very different perspective at a very young age. And what I mean by that is I was in school with people, diplomats' daughters who sent their children to the United States to learn English. There were political figures' children who attended the school. And it opened my eyes very quickly to seeing the world from a different perspective, and from a diversity perspective as far as income, race, and everything else. It also afforded me the opportunity to travel very young. So at 15, I was traveling to Europe. I had gone to Greece for spring break. So it opened me to opportunities that I don't think I would have otherwise received staying in Savannah in my high school. I've always been very adventurous. I've always been one that wanted to see the world and everything that the world could offer. And this afforded me that opportunity.
And it's such a strong testament to the idea of exposure. You know, a lot
Absolutely.
of people talk about kids that grow up in certain areas, whether it's a small town or public housing or this and that. And so much of your idea about what's possible comes from exposure, I believe.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I just had this conversation with 2 of the young ladies that I mentor. I always take them to events to allow them to experience what life can really be like. And I think that's important for us to do. If you have tickets to go to an event that someone wouldn't otherwise even be thinking about going, it's very important because it is all about exposure. And especially as entrepreneurs, it's all about exposure.
How do you think that experience at boarding school shaped who you are as an entrepreneur today?
You know, I have to tell you, it shaped me to know that anything is possible, that I didn't have to limit my thinking, that I could actually be a billionaire because I was going to school with billionaires. And I felt like if they could do it and their families could do it, and my father was already showing us that these things could be done, certainly I could do it. And they were from various backgrounds. And I just took in as much as I could from that experience. And that just let me know that if it could happen for them, it could happen for me. It was happening for my father. And surely if I studied not just my books, but listened. And see, that's what happens a lot as entrepreneurs. We don't listen. We have to learn how to listen more than we talk. So I spent a lot of time listening to their experiences. I went home with a lot of people. I got to share who I was. I got to see their family. And it caused a stirring in my spirit to let me know that it's something more to this life than just working for somebody.
So what did you end up studying after boarding school? Where did you go to college, and then what did you decide to study?
I went to Hampton,
No, you didn't.
I went to Hampton.
I went to Hampton too.
Hampton, but
did we know that?
tell you, and I'm very transparent, and I hope that this will bless somebody. When I got to Hampton, being that I didn't see very many people that looked like me in high school, when I got to Hampton, I went absolutely crazy.
The culture shock, Cheryl.
Yes. So I didn't get my work, Elaine.
You weren't focused.
I'm just being honest. I didn't get
you.
my work. I was hanging out. I was having a great time. Mm-hmm. And my parents said, look, girl, you're not on scholarship. This school, we pay tuition.
Right.
So I flunked out.
You did. So you were like, I got to go. They brought you back home.
Yep. They brought me back home.
It happens.
They brought me back home. And I came home and I was rebellious because I felt like everybody was watching me and trying to tell me what to do. And just think, at 15, I'm in Greece.
Right.
And then I come home. Mm-hmm. So I went to Savannah State and I pledged at Savannah State. And then my godfather came to me one day and he said, Cheryl, he said, you can either stay here and do the same thing, or you can go off to school and do something different. And that was in December. And I'll never forget it. It was the turning point of my life. I packed up. My godfather sat on the board at Shaw University. He packed me up. I went there middle of the semester after Christmas. I went in January, sight unseen. I get to Shaw University. And as soon as I pull up, I make a conscious decision. I said, I cannot stay here beyond this allotted time that I placed in my mind. So I completed 3 years of school in 2 years. Because I had a made up mind. Mm-hmm. And once I make up my mind to do something, it's going to happen. It is going to happen. So I went to school. I excelled. I was homecoming queen. I was a mentor. I was an RA. Whatever I could do to advance and get finished with school and be helpful, that's what I did. So I finished school with the aspiration of going to law school, believe it or not. So once I graduated, I took the LSAT. But I fell in love in the process. Mm-hmm. And I married my husband. I had graduated from school and everything at that time. But once I married my husband, due to the position that he went into, which is in corporate America, he was a corporate executive for Pfizer for many years. 20 years he was actually at Pfizer. And I gave up on my dream. I gave up on my dream.
Now, was that, well, first going back to Hampton, I want to ask you about, you mentioned when you went back home, it was difficult for you having gone to Greece and traveled and done all this wonderful stuff as an early teenager and then to go through this experience. So what was that moment like for you? Was there disappointment on your part? How did you deal with that? For people who are going through, maybe it's not failing out of college, maybe it is, or maybe it was, but how did you get through that moment? And then, as you mentioned, you finally got to the point where your godfather turned things around for you.
Mm-hmm. I was disappointed. I was embarrassed because people knew I had flunked out. Mm-hmm. My parents were upset. They were embarrassed. I was embarrassed. And I made a lot of bad decisions during that time. Of course, nothing that would jeopardize me going to jail or anything, but just bad decisions. Mm-hmm. I was depressed and I had to get help. And I'll be candid with that. So anybody that's listening, if they ever need or feel like they need to get help, you need to get the help that you need and not worry about how everybody is going to feel about you receiving the help that you need to get in a better place.
Right. And was that help through doctors, therapy?
Yes, I actually went into counseling.
Yes.
Yes, I strongly recommend it. Mm-hmm. Elaine, I recommend counseling. If people need counseling, go. So I went to counseling. I got help for myself. I learned a lot about myself. A lot of my decisions were made because I realized a lot of my young age trying to be less than who God was calling me to be because I grew up so fortunate. So I wanted people not to be upset. I wanted people to feel like I'm just like you. It's just that I have more resources. But it was hard for me. So mentally, that played a part in every decision that I made. And I hope that this will help somebody, whether this is their exact situation or is something similar. And that's why I just want to be transparent in sharing this, that you can always come back from a bad decision.
Right.
You can come back from a poor decision. And that you don't have to spend your life trying to be less than to make everybody feel equal to.
That's right. And I think one of the important things that you mentioned, which is what we're all about, you got support. You didn't try to figure it out on your own. You realized that you got support, and that helps you move through that period.
Yes.
So then when you're in college or after college, as you said, and then you're going for the LSAT, or you think you're going to become a lawyer, you get married, and you put your dreams on hold, what was that period of your life like? Was that difficult as someone who now knows that you need to be your full self, right? Not play small anymore.
Yes.
What was that period like after this new understanding that you have about yourself?
It was a lot of transition. It was a lot of give and take. And I felt at many times more giving than taking. And I didn't make good decisions for myself at that time either, because I don't feel like we should ever be in position where we feel like we have to give up our dreams. And having done that, it caused me to feel less than many times. I felt less than when I would enter the room with women who were doing these amazing things that I knew that God was asking me to do. And it made me feel like, why do I have to keep putting everything on hold and putting everybody else first? And if I could share this with you, I remember a specific incident, and I was at the Women of Power Summit. And I went with a friend who was a vice president at AT&T. And I said, I'm just going to go. And I'll tell you, Elaine, it made me feel so bad to walk into the room knowing that I'm in the room with all these powerful women. And I had placed my dreams on hold. And I remember going back to my room and I said, Lord, when you bring me back to this place, I want you to bring me back in my own power, but in the power of you. And I want to come back as the CEO of my own company, having paid my own way, and be fully able to appreciate every single aspect of this conference. Because you see, I didn't walk away feeling like, I wanted to take what the other women had. I was placed in that environment so I could see if God would do it for them, he would do the same thing for me.
It's so interesting. It goes back to what you experienced when you were younger, that exposure, being in an environment where you see what's possible around you and making the decision to make that change.
Yes.
So let me ask you, when you put your, as we say, put your dreams on hold, what was the reason? Was it because your husband needed to take care of his job and do his thing, or was it because you had to move, or what? I'm just curious for women. And
I'll share all of that. Okay. I would love to. Yeah. So as he climbed the corporate ladder, there were certain decisions that needed to be made. So every time he would get a promotion, I would have to give up whatever position that I was in.
Because he had to move?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I've moved 7 times in 20 years.
Okay.
And with those moves, the positions that I had, they didn't have positions in the cities we were moving in. For example, When we lived in Washington, D.C., and this is relevant because it shows how it can play in your psyche. When we lived in Washington, D.C., I had taken a position as a personal shopper at Saks Fifth Avenue. I had climbed to the highest heights. Sheila Johnson was my client from BET. Mm-hmm. I had key political people. I only needed 4 or 5 people because most of my clients had major resources, and they treated me very well. So right after about 90 days or a little bit more after I got Mrs. Johnson, now Newman, Dr. Johnson, as my client, my husband got promoted to regional manager. So I had to give up my position. Mm. So every time we moved, no matter what, I always gave up my position. Mm-hmm. And at a point, that starts to play on you. You become, or I started to become a little bit angry.
Right.
Like, why do I have to give up my dreams all the time? Why do I allow myself to do this? But as time passed and things settled down and I got into a place of really realizing, was I giving up my dream or was I making an excuse? Mm. And I want to explain that because when I go out and speak, people ask me, why do you make that statement? When I finally realized that, Elaine, that I was making my husband and my children an excuse for what I truly knew that God was calling me to do, that's when the light went off. I was always supposed to be an entrepreneur with my own business, while the personal shopping was my own business per se, but it was inside somebody else's. But see, it was easier for me to blame my husband and my children, saying it was because of them, as opposed to address my fear of failing as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And once I realized and I put my arms around it and came face to face with the man in the mirror and accepted full responsibility for everything, that's when my entrepreneurial journey really changed in a drastic way.
So was this after the final move, the final promotion, or at what point in the journey did you determine did you take ownership of it?
I took ownership of this only about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And made some decisions to do whatever it took, whether I failed, not failed, didn't fail, no support from anybody, that I was going to do it anyway.
And what was your first step once you made that decision? Because I feel like the first step is often the hardest for us.
My first step was I participated in an anthology sharing my journey, which I never thought that I would place in writing. And that opened the door to all the businesses that I'm doing right now. Me writing how I felt and sharing what happened to me when we moved, how I felt, being down, depressed, my son being bullied as a result of where we live. I actually placed it in a book. And the reason that that's powerful is because you remember when Oprah made the statement that we all have a story to share, mm-hmm. and how powerful our stories are. That's what it was for me. My story was so powerful that I had to share, that it opened the door for me to truly be the entrepreneur that I needed to be, because I was able to free myself from the bondage that was holding me back.
So what kind of business do you have now? Tell us what you do for your clients and how you work with people today as an entrepreneur.
I actually am a transformational speaker as well as a playwright. And I help women recognize who they are, whose they are, and deal with their unforgiveness and help them pull out the very best in themselves, realizing that they don't need permission from anybody to be great. So I speak, many, many different places. I'm also a 7-time best-selling author. And over the past year, I've helped 57 people share their stories, both women and men. And I have another book that'll be coming out in the next 72 hours, actually, with 20 more women sharing their stories.
It's an anthology as well?
Yes, it's an anthology as well. And I just cast it. Well, I'm sure we'll get into the play and all of that. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, I just launched my media company, Williamson Media Group. Mm-hmm. So I am writing. I'm helping other people write. I'm producing a play. And I just pitched my movie about a month and a half ago at Sony Studios in Culver City, California. So I'm moving from books to media, books to media, books to media. And I speak a lot. I traveled 57,000 miles last year speaking throughout the country.
That's amazing. Now, with your movie, is that about your own story or is it about
Yes,
another
it
story?
is.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's my story. My movie is entitled Saving Carissa, and it's around the redemption and forgiveness.
What do you think, or I should say, why do you think forgiveness is something that a lot of us struggle with? I know it's one of the core values within your business, as you mentioned. Why do you think that's something a lot of us as women struggle with?
Because we don't know how to truly let go. We don't know how to let go of the past. It's easier to hold on to that rather than to move forward and be everything that we're called to be. The other side of forgiveness is we don't realize, once that light goes off and we realize that forgiveness is for us, it's not for whomever hurt us. That's when real change can happen. And when I realized that forgiveness was for me, it was the thing that would set me free, because I realized that sometimes the people who you are holding these grudges, they've already gone on. Mm-hmm. They don't even know or remember that they were the ones to cause this humiliation and pain in your life. Furthermore, they don't even care. They've already gone on to ruin somebody else's life. And we, as the individual, we're holding on to something that is blocking us from blossoming. It is blocking us from our greatness. It makes us sick. It makes us ill. Unforgiveness kills our souls.
Right. Like they say, it's drinking poison, hoping the other person will die.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us, we carry that. We don't even realize that we have it until something happens and you go back and you said, okay, well, didn't even realize I didn't forgive my college roommate for so-and-so. It's like a light that goes off. You don't realize that you're still holding that anger and that pain. And I'll tell you, forgiveness is the most powerful, besides prayer. Forgiveness is the most powerful, besides prayer, that you can do for yourself and for other people.
And tell us about forgiving yourself, too, because of, as you mentioned, some of the things you felt like you had done that were poor decisions. And all of us make them in different ways, whether we're courageous enough to share them as you are or not. But talk to us about the importance, too, of forgiving ourselves for mistakes that we make.
The importance of forgiving yourself is it opens up opportunity for growth. Mm-hmm. When you're in a state of unforgiveness, you really stunt your growth, because you're constantly focused on the past. The past is over. And we don't even realize that once we let these things go, whatever bad decisions that we made, we don't even realize that once we say, God, forgive me, He has cast it as far away from the north, south, east, and west. We are the ones that carry that. But when I got to a place where I looked in the mirror and I said, Cheryl, I forgive you for the phone calls that you made that you should have not made. Cheryl, I forgive you for the people that you hurt, such and such and such. When I did that, I don't think about that anymore. That no longer holds me hostage. Mm-hmm. My soul is free. My mind, and I don't let people remind me of it. I've even said to people, sweetie, you don't have to remind me of my past. I lived it.
Right. That's right. You know the story better than anyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would encourage anyone and everyone that is walking around with any type of unforgiveness, whether it's your mother, your father, your ex-husband, your ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, forgiveness is freedom. Forgiveness will unlock your full potential. Forgiveness will have you walk into a room and disrupt the atmosphere by your mere presence.
Now, in your book, Affirmed, you have 365 positive thoughts and actions to start your day. Speaking of looking in the mirror and forgiving yourself. So many entrepreneurs speak about how they have this miracle morning routine or what they do to start their day powerfully. So for women listening, I would love if we could hear from you. What's one positive thought or action that you give them to help start their days off powerfully?
Every morning I wake up and I tell myself that I am enough. I am enough. I start my day off. I don't pick up the phone. If it's okay, is it okay if I share just a little quick routine?
Please, yes.
Okay. I start my morning off. I don't pick up my cell phone. I don't pick up anything. I go straight upstairs to my desk. I light a candle. I take out my affirmations book. I take out a daily prayer journal. I take out my gratitude journal, and I take out declarations. And the papers are so raggedy, Elaine. I have had the same declaration papers for 4.5 years. And I say those every single day. I write down what I'm grateful for every single day. Every single day. And then I pray and I thank God for everything He has already done. And I manifest my day in my morning. I walk it out in my mind what my day is going to look like. And I always ask God what it is that He wants me to do. Because when I was thinking I was operating in my own power, I got overwhelmed. I wanted to be everything to everybody. I would tell everybody yes, even when it meant no, when I wanted to say no. So I would not practice self-care. I would want to take care of everybody else. But when I started spending that one-on-one time every morning with God, writing out in peace and quiet my day, what I'm thankful for, that made the difference. And I know, and I want to share this, I know people say, oh, I read my Bible on my phone. That's great, but let me tell you what I found. If I have my phone in my hand, and I will come across a great passage, I will highlight it, and I will start texting it out to people. Then a text would come in, and I would say, oh, I'm just going to answer that really quickly. And before you know it, I'm no longer focused on my word. I'm no longer focused on gratitude to God. I've already started my day before I have thanked my Lord and Savior for the provision for that day. So I want to recommend not using the cell phone in the morning for your Bible study and those types of things, because it's so easy to get distracted. There's an alert from Facebook. Oh, so-and-so liked my post. Let me just see who that is. And before you know it, you're no longer focused on pouring into yourself in the morning. You're already pouring into other people.
It's all distractions.
All distractions. All distractions.
What would you say, as you've had your business now, has it been 4 years now?
I've had, which you might get into this. I'm a former franchise owner as well. I used to own 5 title boxing clubs, franchises.
Really? Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. I've sold them. It'll be 2 years this year since I sold them. So,
boxing clubs, did you say?
Boxing clubs.
Now, how did you get into that, Cheryl? Do tell.
Can you believe it? Well, this is what happened. My husband, after he left Pfizer, they had a program where you could speak to people about franchises. So I said, oh, that'll be great. Let's look into that. So we looked into it, and home health care came up, and I said, oh, I don't want to do home health care. No offense to home health care, whoever's listening from home health care. So then the health clubs came up, And so we went out to Kansas and we looked at the presentation, and I said, oh, I could do this. I love fitness. I would help me to meet people and help them get in shape, and I could share with them about the Lord. And people asked me, how did you end up with 5? So I remembered in the presentation, the guy said, well, if you buy 1, that's a job. But if you buy 3 or more, that's a business. So I said, well, I'll get 5. So we bought 5. It was 2 for my husband and I, my thinking, 2 for my husband and I, and then 1 for each one of my children. So I went through and we got all set up and paid our money. And I hope this will bless somebody, what I'm about to say. The month we bought them in April, my husband got diagnosed with cancer in May. So I say that to say, to every entrepreneur that will listen to this podcast, don't give up even when adversity comes. Don't ever give up. So as I care for my husband, of course, anybody who knows anything about franchising, you still have to open because you've taken those franchises off their books. So while I care for my husband, I went ahead, I met with contractors. So you see how my background from being a contractor's daughter, God already knew that I would need this for this time.
Full circle.
Full circle. So I met with contractors. I found the building. I ran the ads in the paper for the trainers. I hired the front office staff, and it worked out perfectly because everything I learned in personal shopping, customer service, and all of those things, I just used them. Everything I've learned all these years from all these moves and being personable and meeting people in every environment from every walk of life, I used it. So I opened Title Boxing Club, 1 in Denton, and then the other 4 were still on the books. But during that time, there was a really painful situation that took place between my husband and family, and some things that didn't settle well with me, that left me in a place where I had to make some decisions. And so in September, I chose to close my doors after being open 3 years. And
this is because of the family matters?
Yes, yes. Yeah, sometimes you have to make decisions that are hard, but you have to do them. And I'm sharing this as an entrepreneur to entrepreneurs. Sometimes you have to make decisions that are difficult, and from a health perspective as well, from a mental health perspective, I needed to close down to kind of look at things and really hear from God, because sometimes we jump out and do things without clarity. We jump out and we do things without clarity. And when you don't have clarity about it, you need to look it in the face and call it exactly what it is. And when I did that, Elaine, that's when I realized yet again, as you remember, I already had something in my heart that I knew God wanted me to do, which is what I'm doing right now. But see, I jumped out and I said, oh, let's get these franchises. I didn't consult God. It was more of an ego thing. Let me do it because I can do it.
So that was before you started the business you have now. You did that first, right? Oh, I see.
Exactly. Exactly. So
how is your husband doing now?
He is cancer free. He is back in corporate America. So he's a vice president at another healthcare company.
And
I am doing my thing.
You're doing your thing. I was going to ask, I imagine he does, but just to ask, since he was such a part of your story, did he support you initially talking about doing your own thing?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Do you feel like during that time where you said, as you mentioned, you were blaming him or his job and, children and all these other reasons, do you feel like he would have supported you during that time anyway, that it was really you? It wasn't that he wouldn't have supported your dream of being an entrepreneur, or what was it like during that time?
No, and I'm very candid. No, I don't think he would have supported it at that time, because I sometimes when you are so set on what you want to do for your career, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's like full steam ahead. I want to be a vice president, and whatever it takes for me to do it, if that means jeopardizing family and everything else, that's what I'm going to do. And I think that was some of the thinking. And I thank God that God has changed that thinking and interceded and changed my life and my family in such a way that now we know that with God at the center, and that anything is possible. And that's why the business has just expanded so much, because everybody is at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing for the right reasons.
Do you feel like you have really found your flow, as they say? Do you feel like now you're in the space, not that you're going to stay exactly where you are, of course you want to, as you said, expand and grow, but do you feel like you're doing the right thing, that you're in your purpose right now?
Elaine, I feel like I'm so much in my purpose. And the reason I can tell you that is because I'm excited every morning when I wake up. I'm excited when I go to bed. I'm excited to see other people prosper and live in abundance, and know that something I have said or shared has helped them realize their gifting and their talents is something that only they can deliver to the world.
I wanted to ask that because I know a lot of women listening, myself included, we've gone through periods where you're trying different things, trying to figure things out. Then you beat yourself up for trying different things, trying to figure things out. As you said, making tough decisions and all of that stuff. But you can get to the point where you find your purpose and your flow. You just have to keep going.
You do have to keep going. And I want to share with you something about purpose. A lot of times people view purpose as this multi-million-dollar idea that falls down from the sky, and you're like, that's my purpose. But I want to tell you really what purpose is. Your purpose is wherever you are right now. Your purpose is, if you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis, that's a part of your purpose. If your child is wayward, that's a part of your purpose, because the purpose is what's going to get you to the destiny. The destiny is the Savior. So wherever he has you at right now, that is a part of your purpose. The real question that people need to be asking, what is my calling? What is my calling? What is God asking and calling me to do? What is that thing when I meet him? And he said, oh, Elaine, why didn't you start that business? And you say, oh, God, I didn't have any money in the bank. And he says, Elaine, but if you had the faith that you said that you had in me, you would have answered your call, because I prepared you through your purpose when you were in purpose.
How do we get to the point where we know how to trust that calling? Is it all about faith?
It is all about faith. You have to believe what you cannot see. And Elaine, I can tell you right now, every single thing that I'm doing, I'm walking it out in absolute faith. I went to California in absolute faith. I don't have any film experience. My film partner, with all the experience, had to cancel at the last minute, and I went anyway. And I ended up not knowing, I didn't go to California with knowing that I would end up in Will Smith's office. I went to the American film market just by chance. I was talking to my brother, and I told him I was going to LA, and he's friends with Will Smith's brother. And he called him and told him I was coming to LA. And that's how I ended up pitching my movie in Overbrook Studios.
Wow.
That was in faith, absolute faith. Every book that I've put out, Soul Talk, the Lord told me, he said, it's time for you to help other women share their stories. But Cheryl, this is it. You cannot share it on social media. I will send you the women. And Elaine, as God is my witness, God sent me all 20 women for Soul Talk. I never struggled. It was no financial strain. God aligned everything. So It's about faith at work. It's about stop worrying and waiting and start worshiping and working.
Mm-hmm. Amen
And
to
that's
that,
what
Cheryl.
we fall short in doing. We'll complain and get complacent quickly when there's no money in the bank. But you have to have that don't give up attitude. You have to have that attitude of a racehorse where you don't look to the left, you don't look to the right, you just look straight ahead, knowing that if you don't get distracted, that thing will come to pass.
What would you say that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
It has taught me that if I believe, anything is possible. Anything is possible. If I believe and I do the work. Believe and do the work. When there's no money in the bank, keep going. Mm-hmm. When everybody is telling you it can't happen for you, keep going. Keep going. Because it will and it can. Because you see, Elaine, it's the battle of the mind. Whatever you tell yourself enough. Do you think when Muhammad Ali said he was the greatest, that he really was the greatest when he first said it?
Right. He became the greatest.
He became the greatest because, see, he trained his mind. He kept telling himself, I am the greatest. Mm-hmm. And then in turn, once he trained his mind to believe he was the greatest, he lived it out. He said it so much that the world believed that he was the greatest. But see, it started with him. Once he decided in his mind that he was the greatest, he became the greatest. And that's what we have to tell ourselves. Whatever that thing is, even when I go to the bank, not to the bank, to the mailbox, I expect checks. I don't expect bills.
Right. That's right.
It's your mind.
It's your mind. Yep.
You win it in your mind. I tell myself every day that I surround myself with big dreamers and big thinkers and people who have the access to get me to my next.
How important has that been to your success as well? Being the people who surround you, because we're all about support here in our support networks. So what does that look like for you?
My support network has been phenomenal. What I did prior to this is, see, this is the part that people miss too. You have to serve before you ask. This is the part that entrepreneurs miss. We are not willing to serve, but we want to ask and expect everybody to do everything for us. That's like when somebody inboxes you and says, hey, I was wondering if you would be my mentor. They don't know anything about you. They've never purchased a book, never participated on your podcast. They don't even have a servant's heart. They have a taker's heart. So as an entrepreneur, what I decided early on is I had to seed into people, whether that was my time, my talents, my resources. So then when you need something, you don't even have to ask. I have people asking me, how can I serve you? What can I do for you? I just launched my ambassador program 3 days ago. I have 20 people who now share my brand, where I don't have to share my brand every day. But see, I seeded and poured into them to the point where when the opportunity came, they're like, yes, I want to be an ambassador for your brand. And now I'm working with them for a year now, building their visibility and credibility so it'll turn into profitability.
Mm-hmm. Very smart. Now tell us how the meeting with, if you can, whatever you can, how did the meeting at Overbrook go? How did you feel? Not even how did it go, the result of, hopefully it'll become this huge project, but just even the fact that you went by yourself, had the faith, as you mentioned, walked in there. The person who was supposed to come with you wasn't there. You didn't even know you were going into that meeting.
Exactly.
What was that like?
Well, it was a little bit, a little unnerving, but I prayed so hard in the car. And when I got to the gate, I looked and I said, my God. And my girlfriend that was supposed to go with me, she said, Cheryl, do you know how many NYU film students can't even get on that lot? Mm-hmm. She said, I know you had an anointing on your life, but not like this. So I get to the gate. My name is not on the list.
Uh-oh.
So I say a prayer under my breath. They called the office, and then the assistant comes down and she just hugs me because I've been pouring into her leading up to me coming. So they sent the email on, I think, Friday night, and I went in, I think it was that Monday. It had to be that Monday. So once I realized what was happening, I just started pouring in. And so I get in the office. I got there early because I didn't know how far the studio was from my hotel. So I was 30 minutes earlier, and he comes in, Harry comes in, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I know our appointment is at 12 noon. I'm early. So here I am sitting in Overbrook Studios at Will Smith's conference table, drinking Will Smith's son's Jada's water, which is called water.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, this is nobody but God.
Wow.
And I'm just like praying. I take out my raggedy declarations papers that I told you I've been carrying for 4 years.
Right, the declarations.
And I start reading them. And he's like, Cheryl, I have you here for this appointed time. So we sit and we talk, and we talk about my brother. They both graduated from Hampton together, Harry. And he says, so tell me your story. So I start telling him, and he says, this is powerful. And he said, what do you think makes this different? I said, because people don't realize that faith is messy. People think that because you love God that you don't get angry, that you don't curse people out. No, you're not supposed to, but it does happen. Mm-hmm. And I said, but we walk around making people feel like when they find out things that rock their world, that because they love God, that they don't get angry, that their house is still clean, meals are still cooked, and they're still sitting up on the front row singing and shouting. That's not accurate. And he said, you are so right. I said, faith is not PG. Sometimes it's R. Mm. So we talked through that, and then he asked me some more questions. The rest of it I'm not at liberty to share right now. Mm-hmm. But it was a powerful meeting. I left inspired. I left knowing that I was operating in my calling because I made very good use of my purpose. Mm-hmm. The purpose of everything that I went through, which is why I said to you, Elaine, purpose and calling is different. See, God had everything, every bit of pain, every bit of bad decisions, it had a purpose. It was for me to get to my calling, which my calling is to be in position to serve humanity at a higher level. So that's why God has me going around the world telling people how to forgive, how to let go of resentment, how to use your voice, how to sell your book, how to believe in something that everybody is saying is impossible, how to be an entrepreneur and be your own cheerleader. Be your own cheerleader. As entrepreneurs, we're looking for everybody to support us. Support yourself. Mm-hmm. Believe in yourself.
I say that too. Even though I talk a lot about support, and I always say, with the best support, how do you show up for yourself? Sometimes we're looking for a savior in other people, but are you showing up for yourself? If you say you're going to be there at a certain time, do you show up on time? If you say you're going to do something, do you do what you say you're going to do? There are so many ways that we don't think about that we're not even showing up for ourselves.
And it's so true. It's so true. But we want everybody else, and I see it all the time. And it burns me up. Oh, nobody is supporting me. Who cares? Who cares? And sometimes we're the biggest naysayers in our own life. Mm-hmm. We don't even have to leave outside of the confines of our own office to find a naysayer, because when we woke up that morning, we're already saying, oh, it's going to be a bad day.
Right.
I stubbed my toe. Oh, I had a bad night, so we carried that into the day. I tell myself every day, it's a great day, period. Mm-hmm. And I don't accept anything less than that. I operate in excellence because excellence is of the Father. So everything I do is in excellence because that's what I'm required to do. That's what he called me to do. He wants us to serve, and he wants us to serve in excellence because we are made in his image. We don't serve a mediocre God.
Excellence. I love it. So now tell me what is, and I'm going to let you go in a few minutes, but I'm curious about your declarations, even if maybe it's not something you want to share publicly of what's on it, but I'm just curious because it's something that not only you do in the morning, but that you take with you to things like that big meeting you spoke about. So what kind of things are on your declarations, just so if people want to write their own?
Absolutely. It says, I declare and decree that I am blessed. I am enough. I attract wealthy donors to give to the vision that God has placed in my heart. God provides in abundance. Trust God to supply. I trust God to supply all my needs. Money, I don't chase money. Money, I attract money. Those are just a few of the things. I have declarations for my children. I declare and decree to have a great relationship with my children. I declare and decree that I will have no tax issues. And people, my parents and people have seen, because I've left them around, and they said, why do you write stuff like that? I said, because I'm in business. Mm-hmm. And people have tax issues. So I go ahead and declare and decree that I will not have tax issues. I declare and decree. I will tell you, Elaine, I have declared and decreed things that I had no idea why God had me write those things down. And they have come to pass. Even when I had no books, none, I declared and decreed that I would be a best-selling author. And it happened. Mm-hmm. And for an entrepreneur, declarations about your business, who you are, and see yourself already happening. See it happening.
And you've had those declarations for 4 years now and growing.
4 years, and I've added to them.
Right.
And in fact, I will tell you the Affirmations book that you spoke about, mm-hmm. I wrote that Affirmations book at one of the lowest points of something that I was going through. And this just shows you how the power of belief. When I came through on the other side, the Holy Spirit said, it's time for you to put out the next book. And I said, well, what do you want it to be? And he said, all the affirmations that I gave you the whole time you were in the storm, working through your purpose.
And that became the book. That
became the Affirmations book. Mm-hmm. Every affirmation in that book. I write all my books are written in little children's, those black and white binders? Mm-hmm. The ones for $1, I write them in there. And I want to share something that I hope will help somebody. You don't have to have all the answers, because you're talking to somebody right now on your podcast that right now has 7 books out in the market, and I can't even type.
Right.
God has sent me somebody for every single thing that he has called me to do. He has sent me the provision. He gave me the vision. I made the decision, and he always provides the provision. And when I share that with people, the fact that I can't even type, and I hope that that will help somebody tonight to stop making excuses about what you can't do.
Mm-hmm. There's always a way.
It's always a way. When you're determined, there's always a way. I've never written a play, but I just cast it this weekend and paid my money to put on 5 shows over 3 days, 1,750 seats, over 8,000 people, April 27th through the 29th. And the reason I can do that is because I believe I can.
Because you believe you can. Tell us about your play. I forgot to ask you about that.
The play is titled Soul Purpose. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about that is it all ties in with, I have a soul movement. My books are Soul Reborn, Soul Talk, Soul Bearer, Soul Source, Sold Out. And my play is Soul Purpose. Every soul has a purpose. And it's about 5 amazing women doing phenomenal things that are going through things in their life. But they all come to the crossroad to realize that although they're all different, they have one thing in common, and that's their love for God.
And did you write this play, or
I worked with 2 other people. I'm the executive producer on the play. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, that was another God thing, because the sister that ended up writing the majority of the play, I ran into her twice in the same day. We knew each other. And she started asking me about what I was doing, and I shared with her my desire, only to find out that she wrote plays.
And that was the alignment that you needed.
That was it. That was it. And the beautiful thing is all key positions on my play are held by women. Mm-hmm. The stage director, the executive producer, the writer, the musical director. And with my play, it's all original music. The soundtrack is all original. And the songs, these lips, these eyes, these thighs, he gave it to me. It's about us standing up, being proud of our dark skin, our lips, our hips, our eyes, and stop feeling like we're less than to make other people feel equal to.
Now, where are you putting it on? You said you have 5 shows coming up?
Yeah, it's in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
It's at the Black Academy of Arts and Letters. It is April 27th through the 29th. The first show will be 7 p.m. on the 27th, and then we'll have 2 shows each day after that, 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And the tickets will go on sale at Ticketmaster next week on Monday.
Okay, I'll make sure I have a link or the phone number so people can find out
absolutely,
if they're in the area. We'll make sure we get that from you. So in closing, Cheryl, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
I would have to say it would be my father, because at a very young age, my father taught me about being a servant. My father taught me that anything is possible if I would just believe, and he walked it out. I could see it. He didn't even have to tell me. He showed it to me by the life that he lived. And I remember people knocking on our door in the middle of the night, and my father would always go to the door and give people money or whatever resources that they needed. And that made me into the person, the server, the giver that I am, and expecting nothing in return. I expect nothing in return when I give. And I learned that from my father specifically, that anything is possible, that a boy with a high school education can become a multimillionaire. I learned that from my father.
Beautiful. So now tell us how we can support you. Tell everyone your website and all the ways that we can get in touch with you. I'll have links to everything, but just so people can hear it.
Absolutely. You can reach me on my website, which is CherylPWilliamson.com. I have a private Facebook group, which is Blessings, Business, and Collaborations, which has about 7,300 people in it, where we discuss business, we collaborate, we pray for one another. I'm on Instagram at Cheryl PW Speaks, and I have an author's page, which is Cheryl PW Speaks. And I can be reached by email at info@CherylPWilliamson.com. And if I could just share one last thing, I'm actually hosting my first international conference in Bimini Island, Bahamas, which is entitled Soul Reborn. And that is on emotional, mental, spiritual, and financial health. And that'll be July 12th through the 15th. And you can get information for the Soul Reborn Conference at soulreborninfo.com. And I have written a book titled that same thing, soulreborn.info is where you can get the conference information. And again, that's July 12th through the 15th. And that will be held in beautiful, beautiful Bimini Island, Bahamas, which is one of the islands that Martin Luther King visited in order to get his inspiration for his I Have a Dream speech.
Wow. So now soulreborn.info?
Yes, soulreborn.info is where all the conference information is.
Okay.
And it's also on my website as well. All my books can be purchased on my website or anywhere books are sold. You can get signed copies from my website, CherylPWilliamson.com. And all of the play information will be on there very soon, but the tickets will go on sale at Ticketmaster on Monday. We just finished casting this past weekend. We're doing callbacks on Monday.
Awesome. Now, I just want to make sure, I always make sure I ask people twice. So it's fine for us to list your email? A link to
absolutely.
Your email? Okay. Info
yes.
at Cheryl. Okay. Excellent.
CherylPWilliamson.com.
Great. Cheryl, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing such an inspiring and powerful message, and for being very transparent about your own story.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you, Elaine. And I pray God's richest blessings on all of your endeavors. May you be abundantly favored.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I need that. Always take a prayer. Amen. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I would love for the listeners to stop expecting other people to call out your greatness, and be responsible to know that your greatness is already inside you. You have everything you need inside you to do what you're being asked to do. And you need to begin to do it unapologetically and in relentless pursuit of excellence.
Excellent. Cheryl, thank you so much. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Cheryl. In fact, I hope you were blessed by that conversation with Cheryl. To find out more about her, about all of her books, ways to get in touch with her, make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to that search icon at the top and just type in Cheryl, CHERYL. Her show notes page will pop up with all of the links, the resources, and the ways to get in touch with her. That's supportissexypodcast.com and just search Cheryl. Now, as I always say, I appreciate you being here. It wouldn't be the same without you. Make sure that if you love this episode, please leave us a review. Let me know what you think of the episode, of the show, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast, because I don't want you to miss anything. Every time you turn on your phone, I want to be there. Maybe not on the weekends, unless you're playing catch up. Either way, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss anything. We've had some incredible women on the show up until and including today, and we have incredible women coming up. So don't miss a thing. Wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe. All right. So thank you again so much for being here. And until we chat next time, always remember, you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.